Alright, picture this. You're standing in front of a rugged SUV, but instead of the familiar growl of a gasoline engine, all you hear is a quiet hum, almost like the calm before a storm. That's the 2026 Jeep Recon EV, and honestly, it feels like we're looking at the future of off-roading without losing that classic Jeep spirit. The Recon EV has been teased for a while now, and finally we get a chance to talk about what it actually brings to the table. Jeep fans, EV fans, or just anyone curious about how a Wrangler alternative might look in the electric age, this one's for you. And trust me, wait till you hear what Jeep did to keep the off-road DNA alive in an EV. From the outside, the 2026 Jeep Recon EV makes one thing clear. Jeep didn't want this to look like some generic futuristic pod on wheels. No, it's boxy, muscular, and unapologetically Jeep. When you see it from the front, that iconic 7-slot grille jumps out at you. But here's the twist, it's closed off because, of course, there's no engine that needs cooling. Instead, it's illuminated, giving the Recon EV this bold, high-tech face that stands out, especially at night. The squared-off fenders, chunky tires, and upright stance immediately remind you of a Wrangler, but with slightly more modern, sculpted lines. You get that ready-to-hit-the-trails vibe, but with the clean touches of an EV. And yes, the doors and roof panels are removable just like a Wrangler. That's a huge deal because Jeep knows people want open-air adventures. And they weren't about to take that away in the electric era. Swing around to the side, and you'll notice the proportions feel tough but refined. The wheels are pushed out to the corners, giving it stability for off-road crawling. And the ground clearance looks generous. Jeep hasn't released exact numbers for every trim yet, but you can bet it's trail-ready. The rear is squared off with bold taillights that light up in a distinctive X pattern, which feels almost like a modern twist on a military-style Jeep. There's also a tailgate-mounted spare tire, because what's a Jeep without that rugged look? The whole design screams adventure while also signaling that this isn't just a Wrangler clone, it's the Recon EV with its own personality. Now let's talk about the inside, because this is where things get really interesting. Climb into the cabin, and immediately you'll notice how Jeep tried to balance rugged functionality with modern EV tech. The 2026 Jeep Recon EV has a clean but purposeful dashboard layout. Right in the middle, you've got a large infotainment screen running the latest Uconnect system. It's crisp, fast, and supports wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Jeep also added trail maps directly into the software, so you don't have to rely on your phone when you're in the middle of nowhere. That's one of those little touches that makes you go, yeah, they thought this through. The seats are designed with adventure in mind too. You can get them in durable, water-resistant materials, so if you've got mud on your clothes after hiking or off-roading, you don't have to freak out about ruining your interior. But they didn't forget comfort. Higher trims get premium leather and stitching that makes the cabin feel upscale, almost Grand Cherokee-like. And here's something you'll love. The floor is washable. Jeep kept those hose-down roots alive, which means you can literally get dirt all over and just spray it out later. Try doing that in your average EV crossover. In terms of space, the Recon EV seats 5 comfortably. The boxy shape really pays off inside, with plenty of headroom even for taller passengers. Cargo space is solid too, especially with the rear seats folded flat. And because it's an EV, there's a front trunk, or frunk, that adds a surprising amount of extra storage. You could fit a couple of duffel bags or all your camping gear without using the main cargo area. It's practical in ways the Wrangler never quite was, and that makes it more appealing to families or anyone using this as a daily driver. But let's get to the real meat of it. How does the 2026 Jeep Recon EV actually perform? Because, let's be honest, off-road credibility is everything for Jeep. Jeep has said that the Recon EV will be trail-rated, which isn't just a sticker, it means it's been tested for traction, water-fording, maneuverability, articulation, and ground clearance. Now, instead of a gas engine, the Recon EV uses a dual-motor setup. That means you've got one motor powering the front wheels and another powering the rear, giving you instant all-wheel drive. And the beauty of electric motors? Instant torque. Unlike a Wrangler where you've got to rev and wait for the power, the Recon EV just delivers that grunt immediately. That's going to make rock crawling and climbing steep grades way easier. The estimated range is around 300 miles, which is pretty solid for an off-road capable EV. Of course, if you're pushing it hard on trails, that number might drop. But for everyday driving and weekend adventures, 300 miles feels like the sweet spot. Charging will depend on the setup. Jeep is promising fast charging capability, so you can add a good chunk of range in under an hour if you find a DC fast charger. Not quite fill up in 5 minutes, but for an EV this size, it's impressive. Jeep hasn't released exact horsepower and torque numbers for every trim, but expect it to be competitive with something like the Ford Bronco EV that's rumored to be coming. We're probably looking at around 400 horsepower and upwards of 450 pound-feet of torque, which is more than enough to get this big SUV moving quickly on-road and confidently off-road. And speaking of on-road, here's where the Recon EV might surprise a lot of people. Because of the low center of gravity from the battery pack, it should handle better than a Wrangler, which can sometimes feel a bit floaty on highways. The Recon EV could genuinely be the more comfortable daily driver while still giving you that weekend warrior capability. Here's a fun little detail. Jeep is equipping the Recon EV with select terrain drive modes. That means you'll be able to toggle between different settings like snow, sand, mud, and rock, just like in their other SUVs. Only this time, it's paired with the precision of electric power delivery. Imagine being able to feather your way up a rocky trail with millimeter precision thanks to the instant torque control of the motors. That's something no gas-powered Wrangler can replicate. Now, what about competitors? The most obvious comparison is the 2026 Jeep Wrangler 4X, which is a plug-in hybrid, and the rumored Bronco EV from Ford. Then there's the Rivian R1S, which is another all-electric SUV with serious off-road chops, but that one is a lot pricier. Tesla's Cybertruck? Well, it's technically in the conversation, but let's be real. It's not the same type of vehicle. The Recon EV is designed to feel like a true Jeep, and that's what makes it unique. Price-wise, Jeep hasn't given exact numbers yet, but early estimates put the 2026 Jeep Recon EV somewhere in the $55,000 to $65,000 range, depending on trim. That's not cheap, but when you compare it to a Wrangler Rubicon or a Rivian, it starts to make sense. And with federal tax credits and possible state incentives, the price could come down a bit for many buyers. Let's talk pros and cons, because no car is perfect. The pros are pretty clear. You get classic Jeep styling with modern EV tech, true off-road capability with instant torque, a practical and functional interior that's also more comfortable than a Wrangler, and that 300-mile range, which feels like the sweet spot for most people. Plus, the removable roof and doors mean you're not losing that adventurous spirit. On the downside, charging infrastructure for off-roaders is still a bit tricky. Imagine trying to find a fast charger in the middle of Moab. Range anxiety is less of an issue in cities, but if you're deep in the wilderness, it's something to think about. And of course, the price might scare off some traditional Jeep fans who are used to paying less for a gas-powered Wrangler. But honestly, the 2026 Jeep Recon EV feels like a bold step in the right direction. It doesn't try to be something it's not. It's still boxy, rugged, and adventurous. It just happens to be powered by electricity instead of gasoline. And for a lot of people, that's the perfect blend of tradition and innovation. If you've always wanted a Wrangler but couldn't deal with the on-road compromises, the Recon EV might just be your answer. And if you're looking to go green without giving up the Jeep lifestyle, this thing makes a strong case. At the end of the day, Jeep knows its audience. They didn't build this for someone who wants a luxury EV that never leaves the pavement. They built it for people who still want to camp, crawl, and explore, but also want to plug in at night instead of filling up at the gas station. The 2026 Jeep Recon EV proves that off-road fun and electric power don't have to live in separate worlds. So, what do you think? Would you take the Recon EV over a traditional Wrangler, or do you think EVs just aren't ready for true off-roading yet? I've got to say, the more I look at this, the more I think it could be one of the coolest Jeeps in years. And with competition heating up in the electric SUV world, this could really set Jeep apart. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the 2026 Jeep Recon EV, make sure to subscribe for more car reviews, because we've got a lot more exciting vehicles coming your way. And who knows, maybe the next off-road adventure you take won't smell like gasoline. It might just hum quietly along the trail.